Welcome to SSUC in this part 2 of our winter series. And I invite you into perhaps a bit of an uncomfortable gathering today. It might be winter outside, but today we explore what we've perhaps all experienced: inner winter. A spiritual winter, a time of dark or sadness or inactivity, a time in our lives we've all experienced where we feel stuck. A season of fallow, of barrenness. So today, I invite you and I welcome you into this time with the words of Parker J. Palmer. In winter, one can walk into woods that had been opaque with summer growth only a few months earlier and see the trees clearly, singly and together, and see the ground that they're rooted in. Winter clears the landscape, however brutally, giving us a chance to see ourselves and each other more clearly, to see the very ground of our being. Palmer continues writing, he says, "Our inward winters take many forms: failure, betrayal, depression, death. But every one of them, in my experience, yields to the same advice: the winters will drive you crazy until you learn to get out into them. Until we enter boldly into the fears we most want to avoid, these fears will dominate our lives. But when we walk directly into them, protected from frostbite by the warm garb of friendship or inner discipline or spiritual guidance, we can learn what they have to teach us. Then we discover once again that the cycle of the seasons is trustworthy and life-giving, even in the most dismaying season of all." So welcome again to this winter gathering of SSUC, where all of us are spiritual seekers, united in community. You belong, and we're glad you've joined us for this gathering of Sunday, January 23rd, 2022. As Deb provides piano music for us today, and Noah and Joseph preside in the tech booth, with Allison and Zoe in the room joining us a little later in the gathering, we welcome you into this virtual space. And for us here in Edmonton, we acknowledge that this is Treaty 6 land, respecting the history, languages, and cultures of the First Nations, Métis, and all First Peoples of Canada. As Rochelle sings us into our time, let's together light our community candles that symbolize our connection and our setting aside of this time in our day to simply be with each other and rest into this time.
This is the time, this is the place to refresh and renew in a mindful space. Others around who also have found our connections in life as the common ground. Much wisdom to share for the living of our lives, a place for receiving and offering care, a time set aside to share.
We take a moment with each other today to mourn the loss of Reverend Bob Seal, who died with his family at his side in hospital on Saturday, January 15th. Bob was the son of a railroader, being born and growing up in rural Alberta. He trained as a teacher and then 2 additional degrees, including a divinity degree from St. Stephen's College in Edmonton. He served churches as a United Church minister in Forestburg and in Edmonton, in Vegreville, and in Goodfish Saddle Lake. He was a man with a strong build, a love of sports and gardening, a solid memory, a solid intellect, a supportive father and grandfather, and above all, a social activist, thoughtful leader, and compassionate man. Most of us at SSUC only knew Bob in these last few years as he moved to Rutherford and made his way to us, not only because of geography, but because he was passionate about inclusion, about speaking theological and spiritual truth in progressive ways. And he found himself at home here among us. We have the opportunity to celebrate Bob, to learn more of his life and honor his legacy as we celebrate his life this Saturday at 12:30 p.m. You're invited to join us via live stream in the usual methods that you're joining us this day. If you were close to Bob and would like to join us in person, there are 2 or 3 spots available in our limited capacity here in the room. So please contact the church if you'd like to attend. As is our custom, it's our honor to sing of our conviction that light endures and our care is extended to Bob's family and to all who knew and love him. We share a time for all ages this morning. That speaks to not just the season of winter, but the seasons that many of us struggle with. Those times of difficulty, times of sadness, times of depression, even. And when we place things into a children's story in such wise and talented ways as this author has, we recognize that there is always a way to talk about the really important things in life. Life, death, big emotions. And so I share with you today a story entitled Virginia Woolf. It's by Caio Maclear and Isabelle Arsenault. One day, my sister Virginia woke up feeling wolfish. She made wolf sounds and did strange things. When I painted her pictures, she growled, "Vanessa, don't!" When her friends rang the doorbell, she moaned, "I'm not home." She scared everyone away. She said, "Do not wear that cheerful yellow dress." My favorite dress. "Do not brush your teeth so loudly." She even told the bird to stop that racket. She was a very bossy wolf. The whole house sank. Up became down, bright became dim, glad became doom. I did my best to cheer her up. I offered her treats. She wolfed them all down. But it made no difference. Nothing pleased her, not the cat, not my violin, not even making faces at our brother Toby. She pulled up her covers and said, "Leave me alone." Then she said nothing to anybody. I lay beside her on the bed. We were two quiet lumps under the blanket. We sank deep among the pillows. We looked out the window and gazed at the sky. We watched the clouds, a smudgy sailboat, a flying llama, a floating castle. It was like a whole other world. Still, my sister said nothing to anybody. After a while, I said, "There must be something that will make everything feel better," I said. "Please, Virginia," I said, "say something." Finally, she replied, "If I were flying right now, I might feel better." "If you were flying, where would you like to go?" I opened her atlas and named a few places: Paris, Tokyo, Mexico City. No, she said. "If I were flying, I would travel to a perfect place, a place with frosted cakes and beautiful flowers and excellent trees to climb and absolutely no doldrums." "Where is that?" I asked. She thought for a moment and said, "Bloomsbury, of course." Bloomsbury? Never heard of it. "Is that near Burlington?" She shook her head and sighed. "Buffalo?" "I don't think so," she growled, slipping under the covers. I flipped through her atlas but found no Bloomsbury. No perfect place. I didn't tell my sister, but I had an idea. I found my art box and a stack of paper and tiptoed around the room while my sister napped. I made a garden. I painted trees and strange candy blossoms and green shoots and frosted cakes. I painted leaves that said hush in the wind and fruit that squeaked. And slowly, I created a place called Bloomsbury. I made it look just the way it sounded. My sister woke up. At first, she was too busy howling at the moon to notice what I was doing. I painted a swing and a ladder that reached up to the window so that what was down could climb up. My sister started to pay attention. I brought the outside inside. I painted floating petals that looked like confetti. My sister stood up and helped. She said wolves like to wander around, so we painted a field with a big roaming space. We made turquoise birds and purple butterflies out of colored paper. And Virginia told a story about a gray-shelled snail that passed along the earth and reached the top of a mountain without realizing it. The whole house lifted. Down became up. Dim became bright. Gloom became glad. When we were done, it was past midnight. Everyone slept soundly. The next morning, my sister woke up and said, "The flowers are floppy." I nodded. "The trees look like lollipops." I nodded again. "That shrub looks like an elephant." She laughed. "Ugh, you hate it," I groaned. "No," she said. "It's perfect. I love it." I smiled. She looked different. So I asked how she felt. "Much better," she said, looking a bit sheepish. "Do you really feel better?" I asked. "Yes." She smiled and took my hand. "Now let's go out and play."
One light, one sun lighting everyone. One world turning, one world turning everyone. One world, one home, one world home for everyone. One dream, one song heard by everyone. One love, one heart warming everyone. One hope, one joy, one love filling everyone. One light, one sun lighting everyone. One light warming everyone.
Parker Palmer, easy for me to say. Parker Palmer reminds us that our inward winters take many forms. But they have in common that they require us to enter boldly our fears, the things we most want to avoid. And then Kyo McClear, in our children's story, reminds us that we are sometimes not ourselves when we are experiencing the winters of our souls. And this metaphor of winter gives us space to comfort ourselves with the reality that the cycle of the seasons is trustworthy and life-giving, even in the coldest and most barren seasons of our experience. Catherine May, in her book Wintering, The Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Times, writes this: "We're not raised to recognize wintering or to acknowledge it. Instead, we tend to see it as a humiliation, something to be hidden from view lest we shock the world too greatly. We put on a brave public face and grieve privately. We pretend not to see other people's pain. This means we've made a secret of an entirely ordinary process and have thereby given those who endure it pariah status, forcing them to drop out of everyday life in order to conceal their quote-unquote failure. Yet we do this at a great cost. Wintering brings about some of the most profound and insightful moments of our human experience. And wisdom resides greatly in those who have wintered. In this spirit, let's hear some lived wisdom from one among us who's wintered. Lauren Lee, who is spending a few weeks of his winter in Radium, Alberta, was kind and courageous enough to share part of his story with all of us this week.
Several months after my second wife, Karen Ann, died in 2010, I attended a Banff men's conference. There was a book display and sale. In it, I found a very small book entitled The Four Seasons of Grieving by A. Lynn Wagner. The book did not cost much, but the value I got from it was worth the conference fee. Fall represented initial grief with falling leaves and browning of grass, the lengthening of nights. But what most caught my attention was the description of winter as a time when many things were happening unnoticed by a blanket of snow. Many animals used the snow as shelter from their enemies. Bulbs such as tulips, crocus, and garlic needed the protection to generate new life. Many seeds need the freezing thaw cycle to break in order to germinate. In my grief, with regular deliberate thought and reflection, I began to see the small things that were happening to me. Better sleep, more energy, so that I could in time grow as a person, build on my strengths, and develop new interests. It was not long before there was a smile on my face and a bounce in my step. Spring had sprung. Even metaphoric spring storms, seemingly a slip backwards to winter, were easier to understand. I have been blessed to love and been loved by Anne for almost 40 years, by Karen Ann for 5 years, and by my new best friend Donna for 10 years. Blessings.
Lauren describes his winter of grief in a beautiful way. The patience that perhaps he didn't feel at the time, but in reflection, the patience he sensed he had in his wintering until he was able to see the signs of a coming spring, a slight change here and there, as he described. Growth as a person. Thank you again, Lauren, for sharing this and sharing your heart with us. Grief is not the only cause of our wintering. Like Catherine May in her quote and Parker Palmer in his have shared, those inward winters take many forms. In his book Renewal, Eknath Easwaran writes about this kind of patience when he writes, "Patience is one of the most valuable allies in the difficult journey of self-transformation. When you're able to be patient with others, you can then be patient with yourself, and it will give you that inner support you need to persevere." Winter gives us ample opportunities to build up our patience with ourselves, maybe particularly the last couple of winters we've all experienced. Think of the care and vigilance for all the obstacles thrown in our path in the winter. By bad weather, by car trouble, by stressed people, by pandemic restrictions, and lots of other potential patience builders. But let's not forget to link these back again to the way we treat ourselves. What can we learn about our patience and impatience? How is that actually manifesting in the way we treat ourselves? We deserve to be patient with ourselves, to winter at the pace that we need. On that topic, here's a winter submission by Virginia Sauvé. She wrote this week, "While winter no doubt makes my life more challenging at this stage of my health, there is much about winter that I have always loved. The stillness invites me to bask in inner peace, to read the inevitable pile of books I yearn to really get into, and to reflect and remember the people and experiences in my life that have made me who I am." I want to spend just a minute or two on the ancient Hebrew idea of rest, because I think wintering and rest go so hand in hand, and they help us with this idea of what it means to winter. There are two main words used for rest in the Hebrew writings. The first is Shabbat, which maybe you've heard of. It gets partially translated into the English word Sabbath. This word for rest means to stop working, literally, just simply stop. Like when you clock out of an hourly job, you go home, you don't do the work anymore. That kind of stopping. And the other is nuach. This means to dwell or to settle, and it's not the same as simply stopping. This type of rest is like sitting in front of a fire with your loved ones, or unpacking a suitcase to stay at grandma's house for the holidays. It's essentially about being restfully present. Settling into a time and a place and an experience with ourselves or with others or with nature or with whatever we relate to as sacred. It seems like the ideas of Shabbat and Nuach are meant to work together. We have to Shabbat in order to Nuach, to stop working and truly rest in sacredness. The idea of Sabbath is also a cycle for our spiritual ancestors, a cycle that keeps going and going in different size circles. There's a time to stop and settle in each day with moments of gratitude or meditation or prayer or a daily walk or a moment at a meal or whatever that is for you. There's this daily cycle of stopping and settling. Maybe it's before your feet touch the ground in the morning, or as a way of calming yourself at the end of the day, or any countless moments in between. But then, these spiritual ancestors of ours have told us that there is a day in each week to pause and settle. It could be Friday or Saturday or Sunday, or for me it's Monday. What is your day off? Even if you're home 7 days a week, how do you make one of them different? How do you stop and settle? Then they say there's a Sabbath year, 1 in every 7, in which the fields were allowed to lie fallow. And then a Jubilee year, 1 in every 50, where leased and mortgaged lands were to be returned to their owners and all slaves and laborers were to be freed. Well, in any case, you get the point. Spiritual traditions have different ways of describing the same cycles. A lifetime of rhythms, cycling through seasons of Shabbat and Nuach, pausing and dwelling, stopping and settling. This surrender to our wintering, although painful at times, positions us to receive something new, something that we haven't received yet or conceived of. Even if the cold, even if the time in our life that seems the most wintry seems like everything is inert, seems like things are stuck, seems like things just aren't moving forward. Life is oriented towards growth, even in our winters. And these are times where we can discover something new and love about ourselves and our journey. Seemingly barren seasons might convince you that your roots are hardened. Not necessarily so. Let's remember the wisdom of nature and how much is going on under the ground to conserve and store energy, to build what's needed for the next step. Winter is a time when the inside can be nourished, even when the outside feels barren or stuck. This is the wisdom of nature. This is a truth in our wintering. And will we be patient enough with ourselves to let it happen? Now, if I say the words self-compassion and self-care to you, I'm guessing that you have certain things that come to your mind. I would love to hear what some of those are. But those words often conjure up a few well-known cliches. Self-soothing actions like having a hot bath or lighting candles and putting relaxing music on. And to tell you the truth, those ideas work for some and not for others. We all have different needs and different tastes, and what is self-compassion or self-care to one person might not be for another. But as we talk about those words that are so important in a season of wintering, in a time of spiritual winter, we forget about the balance of two things. First, a soothing and comforting and nurturing yin side that is all about being with ourselves, like through comforting activities, by validating ourselves with a little personal pep talk or doing things that are restful, that rejuvenate us. And, not or, but and a protective, providing, motivating young side, focused on taking actions to safeguard one's well-being, like the support we can give to others, like going back to an inspiring article or book that revs us up, like making lists, like speaking up or acting in areas of injustice, like donating to something important to us, like participating in some way, like even just standing up and moving around. When we look at those two categories, we have to ask ourselves the question, what practical behaviors come to mind that might work for you, that maintain this balance? Which side have we been ignoring, if any? What activities or work or self-care in both of these areas would we like to try? I want us to listen to the play between these two sides of our self-care and self-compassion in what Bonnie has spoken about in a piece that she reflected on this week and a memory of winter for her.
I am reminded about an amazing surprise blizzard in Edmonton, which brought everything to a halt. I was coming from the university and made the last bus before all transportation stopped. My children and Ed were dismissed early from their respective school and downtown office. After leaving my bus, I remember literally climbing through waist-high snow down on our front street and my legs growing numb. I was breathing hard with each giant step and, of course, inadequately dressed for such an event. Wet and tired, I was relieved to see our house. Even more, it was reassuring to see my family at the front door. Feel the warmth of the room and especially the warmth of their caring. This was so opposite to the lovely winter days when we could cross-country ski in the beauty and stillness of Harlack Park, stopping to feed the chickadees from our hands. It rather reminds me that life is full of opposites. We need the difficult to appreciate the comfortable, the harshness of winter to appreciate its absolute beauty.
In this season of winter or in the spiritual winter you might be experiencing in your life, that feeling of being stuck or dry, that sense of nothing being fresh or life-giving. Even our wolfish moods, our seasonal depressions or other things that we feel. I want to encourage us. I want to encourage us with the wisdom that we've heard this morning from so many different sources. Number one, let's be encouraged to keep talking about it with each other. It's not a secret, like Catherine May reminds us. It's not shameful. It's part of living through the seasons of our lives. Let's practice patience, especially with ourselves. Let's give ourselves permission and proactively build our days, our weeks, our months with Shabbat and Nuach, with pausing and dwelling, with stopping and settling. And in that time, let's care for ourselves in the balance of comforting and providing, of being and acting. In this winter day, may it be so for you, and may we find new ways for it to be that way.
Hello. Great to be with you. I'm Allison Brooks Starks, and I'm here with Zoe Chaters. And we've been offering connections with nature through SSUC for a long time now, and we hope to expand those invitations. And that includes right now. We've been invited by Chris and Nancy to bring moments with nature into these gatherings. Let's find a wild sanctuary. Soon, we will be inviting you, Soon we'll be inviting you to tune into winter using your senses. So if you wish, you can move now to a space in your home where you can still hear us and also connect with nature. Look out a window or stand in a doorway. Using our 5 senses to get grounded and come back to a feeling of, I am here, now, is a classic invitation in both ecotherapy and forest bathing. Like me, you may already use a similar senses practice regularly. I even just scan a room with my eyes and notice the colors of a few things when I feel gone or feel stressed. This works wonders when I'm outside. I have found that nature can hold me and ground me if I remember to go slowly. As we risk peering into our spiritual winter, know that nature is a safe place to do that. Just by slowing down and deeply noticing our surroundings, we can invite calm and peace back into our bodies. Let's try it together now. This is a quiet and solitary practice, but it's nice to remember that dotted all across this land, there are so many others who are also noticing winter. Okay, get comfortable. Zoe will lead us through.
We invite you now to shift your attention towards settling, towards rest, towards winter, and towards nature. You may wish to relax your gaze or close your eyes. Begin to notice your breathing. You don't need to change anything, just be present to air filling your lungs and belly. Gently bring your awareness to our 5 main senses: sight, smell, touch, taste, and sound. When you are ready, slowly open your eyes. Allow them to roam freely or rest on a single sight. Notice how light dances on snow. Notice the expansive stretch of sky above us. Notice the depth of colors that contrast with white and gray in winter. Now we tune into our sense of sound, the quiet hum of a furnace warming our homes, the sounds of birds singing or wind blowing through a cracked window or door. What can we hear in the quiet of winter? Now we open our senses to both taste and smell. Poke your tongue out and feel the dry winter air. Take a deep breath in, noticing the smells of winter as you fill your belly and your body with cold air. Just like the snow-topped conifers who breathe, so too do we. And finally, our sense of touch. If you can, gently reach out and touch nature. Otherwise, you might run your fingertips across the back of your hand. After all, we too are nature. Bring your attention back to your breathing. Bring yourself back into your space, knowing that nature is ready and waiting to walk with you through winter.
Holding fast
It's with both our actions and our resting into ourselves that we make a difference in this world and to ourselves. So, with words that we might share together out loud or silently, keep them within our strong selves. We strengthen our intentions to live more closely, just as we pray. Too often we walk as those that are devoid of spirit, empty, soul-split, hollow husks. We move from one place to another, rustling now and then, eager to make it look like movement. Any movement is progress. And we wait to be filled from some outside source, a pouring into us, a breathing and inspiriting from some intangible being or thing. We are held by rumors of otherness, of deities that will bless us finally into being who we are meant to be. This is the call to come out of our emptiness. Walk tall with me through the dried grasses of our yesterdays. We'll turn them to grain for tomorrow, for all the seasons of doubt. And our hearts will see one another, bow in humble recognition, and know from that pure and simple act that we are who we are meant to be, real and holy beings. And it is we whose lives pour, breathe into, and inspirit the world. Let this be our work and our joy. May it be so. Sometimes when wisdom and truth speaks to your heart, it catches in your throat. It's how we know when there is something at work under the surface. And so in this winter, may we help each other feel and sense and work toward our own springing. And in the meantime, it's just okay to be here in the winter. So let the light warm you in all its forms. May it move among us and connect us all. And so in the days and the weeks ahead, may we have Sabbath and Nuak, and may we go in peace.